بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of outlines of transcendent philosophy. We talked about the ideas of Muslim philosophers about haraka and compared between Mulla Sadra's ideas and philosophers prior to Mulla Sadra. At the end of the lesson, there is a discussion, and the heading is Wahdat Masafatu Harakatu Zaman, unity of distance, motion, and time. Philosophers prior to Mulla Sadra had the idea that these are three different things: time, distance, and motion itself are different things. But according to Mulla Sadra, there is only one reality, one being, and our mind takes different pictures, different images of the same thing. They are not separate realities. So Sheikh Ubudiyat has a very good discussion here, and he says, as we explained, time is not something separate from what is moving. Time is the same as a kind of dynamic continuity of haraka, امتداد سیال. So امتداد، حرکه، زمان, and مسافه, these four: continuity, motion, time, and distance. These are not four separate things. Time is the same as that continuity, but it is sayyal, it's dynamic, it's vibrant. And masafa, as you remember, we said distance is the category in which that subject is moving, and that is also dynamic. It's not fixed and static. So there is one simple reality outside which can help our mind to abstract or to take different concepts and different pictures. I like to read some sentences which are very fundamental here. یک واقعیت خارجی بسیط است. There is one simple reality outside که به اعتباری مصداق مفهوم مقوله است. According to one consideration, it is an instance for that category. If it is color, whatever, so this is an instance for that category. According to another consideration, مصداق مفهوم زمان, the same thing is an instance for the concept of zaman. So masafa and zaman are the same as haraka, because haraka is also that continuity. در خارج بیش از after few lines در خارج بیش از یک واقعیت بسیط نیست. There is nothing more than one simple reality که به اعتباری مصداق مفهوم حرکت است و به اعتباری دیگر مصداق مفهوم مقوله، چنان که همین واقعیت به اعتبار سومی مصداق مفهوم زمان نیز بود. So there is one simple reality that according to one consideration is an instance for the concept of haraka, according to another one is an instance for the concept of category, masafa, and then it's also for time, the concept of time. پس از دیدگاه صدر المتعلهین ذهن است که یک واقعیت بسیط را به 4 امر تحلیل می کند یا به زبان ساده تر آن را 4 چیز می بیند. So it is our mind that analyzes one thing into 4 things, or you can say is seeing 4 things. But after further consideration, we realize that these are not 4 separate things. Then he continues and he says, these 4 are 1, an essence which is under one certain particular category. ذاتی می‌بیند مندرج در مقوله. Essence, as you know, can be jawhar, can be araz. For example, if we talk about araz, color, or shakl, a figure, or shape and temperature, etc. So it's an essence. The second thing, our mind sees change. The third is our mind sees continuity. The fourth is that our mind sees quantity, measure. These 4 are not separate. You know, one of the functions of mind is that can present to us divided and separate things as one thing, and also can present to us one thing as divided and separate things. We need actually, this is not a bad thing, but we have to be careful. This is very good power of analysis and synthesis that mind can do. But we have to be careful and not think that if mind is considering few things, they are necessarily few beings outside, separate from each other. در نگرش ابتدایی, in the first consideration, mind considers each of them as a separate reality and gives different name. Masafat for the category, haraka for sayyal, that's sayyalan, that change, gradual change. Imtidad, continuity, for that connection, connectedness, and time for the quantity and measure of that change. So it gives different names, but it's one thing. So he says, پس از تجزیه و تحلیل, after analysis, our mind realizes that these 4, or judges that these 4 are not 4 realities. It's one reality which has 4 concepts. So, according to Mulla Sadra, when something is moving in a category, it means that we have fard sayyal, we have a moving instance or example or individual or case of that category. It can be Johari or it can be Arazi. Inshallah, after this we will start talking about Haraka in Johar. So, before Mulla Sadra, they considered Masafa, time, and Haraka as different things that are closely next to each other, and put each other next to each other. According to Mulla Sadra, these are only different in considerations. Otherwise, there is one thing which is gradually changing, and our mind can take different pictures of that. Now, let us go to lesson 7. This is the continuity for lesson 6, but it focuses on harakat jawhari. 6 was on haraka in general, prepared, and actually referred several times to harakat jawhari, but now we want to focus on harakat jawhari, substantial motion. One of the key things that you need to always remember is that according to Mulla Sadra, please remember this all the time, according to Mulla Sadra, haraka in every category, whether it is jawhari or arazi, means that you have fard sayyal, you have a changing and moving individual or instance of that category. If it is in kam, if it is in kayf, in ayn, in wada, or in jawhar, in all these cases, haraka in these categories means that we have fard sayyal of that category. This is a key thing that you have to remember. Before Mulla Sadra, they had the idea that haraka is only in accidental categories. They limited it to kam, kayf, ayn, and then Ibn Sina added wad, but nothing like jawhar. What was the problem for them to have haraka in jawhar? The problem was that one of the 6 elements in every haraka is mawzu', is mutaharrik, and they had the idea that mawzu' has to be fixed, has to remain the same. We cannot have 100% change. We can have change of something, but that thing itself should be the same. If we have haraka in kam, in kayf, in ayn, in wad, no problem. Jawhar is fixed. So we can say it's the same thing which is changing its quantity or quality or location, etc. But if jawhar is changing, then what remains from the same thing? They had the idea that nothing remains. Especially, I add this, it's not mentioned here, but it's mentioned in another place, that especially remember, when jawhar changes, all a'raz have to change. Because a'raz belong to jawhar, are subordinate to jawhar. We cannot have a'raz the same and jawhar changes. So when jawhar changes, a'raz must also change. So if kam, kayf, ayn was change and jawhar is fixed, so we have jawhar and we have the rest of the things also there. But if jawhar changes, everything, whether it is jawhar or all the a'raz of that thing, have to change. So for them, this was not possible. Okay? So they didn't believe in motion in substance. But Mulla Sadra's idea of fard sayyal, which we discussed last week, is explaining how is it possible to have haraka in jawhar. Sheikh Ubudiyat has very beautiful example and explanation here, mashallah. I very much enjoyed. and may Allah inshallah bless him, because as I told you, for many years, maybe now decades, not maybe, really, for decades he's focusing on Mulla Sadra, and just studying and writing, rarely teaching, and maybe exceptionally doing anything else. He's very focused. We need in Hose people who just focus on research and this kind of things, but in a connection, of course, with other people, get feedback, use opinion of other scholars. So alhamdulillah, he has this tawfiq. So I very much enjoyed, this part. He says, in order to understand better Mulla Sadra's example of Fard Sayyal, and to understand that time is not separate, time is the fourth dimension of something. Imagine a paper. The best example comes after this, but we start with this example. Imagine a paper. This paper, if you are not equipped with Mulla Sadra's ideas, you think this paper is fixed. And when you look at the paper, you think that you are seeing the whole being of this paper at each moment. Because you think this paper is something which has three, for example, dimensions. And you think the whole paper is present for you. Or if you hold it in your hand, you think you have, held all the things about this paper. But if we believe in harakat al-jawhari and time being the fourth dimension, the only way to hold the whole being of paper in your look or in your hand is to have a continuous consideration of the paper. How, if someone divides the paper into half lengths or half widths, etc., is not the whole paper? If you also only consider one moment of the paper, is not the whole paper. Because this paper has extended being over time, not just over a space. Okay? Now, the best example is this one. This was to prepare. Imagine if you have a surface, like a plane surface, which has only two dimensions. Yeah, Sath, not hajm, is two dimensions. Not line. Line is one dimension. Sath has two dimensions. Okay? Imagine there is surface. Then there is a shape like a square on this surface. A square is also, as you know, Sath. One type of Sath is a square. It has two dimensions, lengths and widths. Okay. If a square, imagine, for example, put yourself in the position of that square. If you are a square on one Sath, and you are also yourself a Sath, the only thing that you can recognize is something which has two dimensions, and it is on this Sath. If there is something above or lower, you don't recognize. Yeah, because your understanding as a two-dimensional being is limited to these two dimensions. You cannot understand anything else. Okay? Now, imagine we have something like a, for example, pyramid. And the basis of this pyramid, imagine, is like a triangle. Okay? And this pyramid, we bring it, or it comes by itself, closer, closer, closer to this surface. At some point, it touches. Is there any question about sound or picture? Do you have my picture and sound, my audio, video and audio?
Yes, Sheikh, we have.
Okay, because I saw someone's hand. Okay, thank you. If there is any question, inshallah, after I finish, I will, stop and we can have questions. But because this is a very important discussion, I want to continue. So, if this object, like a pyramid, comes closer, closer to this surface, and remember, we said the basis is like a triangle. When it comes and touches the surface, what is the shape of the point of contact? A triangle. Okay? But then this goes down, further down, 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 and finally goes through it. Suppose it takes 5 hours that this object goes through this surface. A square on this surface, which has only 2 dimensions, can only understand that triangle, which is the point of contact between that object and this surface. Okay? Cannot understand anything above or lower, as we explained. Just understand the point of contact, which is a triangle. For the square, this triangle is existing for 5 hours. Because throughout these 5 hours, we have always contact in the shape of triangle. Okay? So, this square thinks that there is a triangle which exists from this point up to 5 hours. For example, if this took place, the contact at 7 a.m. till 12 a.m. for 5 hours, for 5 hours, this triangle exists. A square thinks that this triangle is fixed. Why? Because a square doesn't understand anything other than 2 dimensions. As long as this triangle has the same dimensions, it's the same. Okay? But when we look at it and we are able to understand 3 dimensions, we see, no, there is also something else, the height. We realize that this is not the same triangle. Yes, continuously there was a point of contact which looked like triangle, but this is not the same triangle. At each point was different. We had fard sayyal of triangle. Okay, this is very important. Now we go back to the example of paper in my hand. I think this paper is in my hand and I have the whole being of paper in my hand at each moment. But the reality is that this paper has a 4th dimension, like the 3rd dimension that the square was not understanding. this has a fourth dimension that I am not understanding. And I think there is always a paper like that, a square, who thought that for 5 hours there is only a triangle, one triangle. But this paper has continuity, has a fourth dimension, which is time. So we should not think because we are not aware of that, this has no fourth dimension and it is fixed. It's not fixed. It's sayyal. This is the whole point, but in a very, simplified way, about harakat jawhari. The things that we look outside and we think they are fixed in substance, and only their kam or kayf or ayn or waz change, they are not fixed. You need to be sensitive to time. You need to be sensitive to gradual process in them, and you would realize that it's like just the object, the pyramid, which was going through a surface, and the square on that surface was not able to understand. It's a very beautiful way of illustrating and explaining this idea. He says, like that square, we are not able to understand a changing object completely because we are not able to understand the fourth dimension. We think it's the same thing, but in reality, it's being renewed. Like that triangle, it's not the same triangle because it's going through, but the square thing is the same triangle. Like a river that you look, you think it's the same water, but it's not the same water. Water is being renewed. But when we say it's renewed, it's in a gradual way, not that someone quickly takes all the water out of the river and puts water, takes out, puts water. No, there is no point of emptiness, as there is no point of sukoon in haraka. Haraka is not sukoon after sukoon after sukoon. Haraka is one continuous reality, one continuous change. You can have several haraka. It's not a problem. Something can move for 1 hour, a stop, and then a start. Then this is 2 haraka. Stop and then a start is 2 haraka. But each haraka is 1. And as I said, when something is changing in its essence, it's in its substance, in its jawhar, I mean substantial sense, all other aspects have to change. All a'raz have to change. Mulla Sadra has not specifically mentioned this, but he has hints to this point that if jawhar changes, all a'raz have to change. He has made a hint to this, and sometimes also maybe he speaks against this, Sheikh Ubudiyat says, but it seems that this is what he hints to in some places, and it's a logical implication that when substance changes, all the a'raz have to change. Now, going back to the problem of previous philosophers about possibility of harakat al-jawhari, we try to make sense of it, we try to understand. Now, the question or the main problem that they had was what? Not having a fixed mutaharrik, a fixed subject. Yeah? That was the problem. According to Mulla Sadra, haraka is not an araz, is not an accident. Please pay attention to this point. Haraka is a type of existence, is a mode of existence. So haraka is not in need of mawzu. Okay? It's not araz. It's not like color. Color needs jawhar. Kayf, kam, mata, and yaf'al, and yanfa'il, jada. All these categories, 9 categories, they need jawhar as substance to be their subject. Haraka doesn't need any subject, any jawhar, because haraka is a type of existence. Okay? Now, when a'raz, accidents change, previous philosophers said that there must be a fixed jawhar for them. We say no, according to Hikmat Muta'aliyah. We say haraka itself is not araz. And then a'raz with change, they can change with changeable substance, or you can imagine even the substance is changing. What's the problem? They need a substance, but it has to be fard sayyal. Araz can change and be fard sayyal. The substance for araz can be changing and be fard sayyal. There is no problem. What we need is that there must be substance for a'raz. But if a'raz have fard sayyal, substance also can have fard sayyal. There is no problem. There is no need for having fixed substance, fixed subject. There is a rule which we mentioned before, كل حادث مسبوق بقوة ومادة تحمله. Everything which is hadith, everything which is renewed, for example, or created after not being there, needs quwwa, potentiality, and a matter which carries that quwwa. But here we are not talking about haraka as a hadith. Haraka is not hadith. Haraka is a type of existence, a type of hudus, a type of being. Is not hadith. Yes, araz is changing, so it can be hadith, but araz has jawhar, no problem. There is no problem. In any case, it's a totally different outlook to haraka from looking at haraka as a kind of secondary accidental thing that can happen to something. Our paradigm is now shifted to haraka being a type of being. This being is changeable. It's very much part of the nature of this being. From the core of it, it's changing. Substance changes, a'raz also change. So it's different kind of outlook or paradigm. So Sheikh Ubudiyat says, به نظر صدر المتعلهین حرکت اساساً عرض نیست تا به چنین موضوعی نیازمند باشد. Motion is not a kind of araz or accident which needs a subject. بل نحوه وجود فرد مقوله است که حرکت در آن رخ می‌دهد. حرکت is a type of existence for the individual case or the instance of that category in which حرکت is taking form. If حرکت is in camp or cave, okay, it's a type of being, a type of existence for that thing in that category, that instance. For example, color, that color has gradual existence. همان سیلان و تجدد فرد سیال مقوله است که در حین حرکت وجود می‌یابد. حرکت is change and kind of transformation, a kind of change of that dynamic instance of that category, which is masafa of that haraka. If that thing which is changing is araz, it needs jawhar. If it is jawhar, it doesn't need any other mawzu. But haraka has nothing to do with this. Haraka is a type of being, either for araz which is changing or jawhar which is changing. But haraka is a type of being for that instance of that category. پس حرکت به ماهیه به موضوعی که نقش آن در حرکت همان نقش جوهر برای عرض است نیازمند نیست، چه رسد به ثبات و بقای آن. Motion as such, motion by itself, doesn't need a subject as araz needs. So that you say, in haraka we need a subject, and that subject has to be the same. Haraka doesn't need a subject like araz, so that we say it has to be the same or it doesn't need to be the same. There is no need for mawzu because it's not araz. Haraka is a type of wujud. Araz and jawhar are about mahiyya. Mahiyya is either jawhar or araz. Wujud is not araz. And then he continues. I wanted to finish the discussion today, but still we need a little bit more discussion. And then, inshallah, we will discuss about ilm huzuri, about knowledge by presence, inshallah, after we finish this. We have discussed most of the things, just we have a little more to discuss. Now, if you have any question, any comment, please share. We can, inshallah, discuss them. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Is there any question, any comment?
I have a question.
Please.
About this haraka being wujudi. So, I mean, if it doesn't need a mawzu, but we see haraka always in a mawzu itself, isn't it? So how can we say that it's free of mawzu? Where does that
No, we mean by mawzu here mawzu mustaghni. You know, in the definition of jawhar and araz, we said araz mahiyatun iza wujidat fi mawzu. Yeah, we said araz is a mahiyya that when it exists in a mawzu, in a subject. Means like a place, like something that this araz can be depending on. Okay, we mean by mawzu this one. Jawhar mahiyatun iza wujidat la fi mawzu. Then we made this definition more precise when we talked about madde and surat, because surat also needs mawzu. and madde is mawzu for surat, and both of them are jawhar. So in order to make this definition even more precise, we said the difference between mawzu for araz and mawzu for surat is that surat has a mawzu which needs surah, because madde cannot exist without surah. But araz needs a mawzu, jawhar, which doesn't need araz. So we said in the case of araz, mawzu is mustaghni, doesn't need. There is no substantial need for araz. In any case, what we are talking about mawzu here is the technical definition of mawzu as a holder, as a basis on which araz can be existing. For haraka, we are not talking about an araz. Haraka is a type of existence. Therefore, haraka doesn't need to belong to a substance. Okay? Haraka is a type of existence. This existence can be jawhar, can be araz, because wujud can be jawhari, can be arazi, but we don't use definition of jawhar and araz in the mahiyya way. We say, yeah. So, wujud is either wajib or mumkin, and mumkin can have different modes. If you use language of asalatul mahiyya, we say this wujud is araz or jawhar. But if you use language of asalatul wujud, then we have to explain it in different way. Was it clear, or I just made it more complicated?
Yes, thank you, Sheikh.
Yeah, welcome. May Allah bless you. Is there any other question or comment? Okay, inshallah, we will continue this discussion bi-iznillah next week. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Iltimas dua.